Right. So, what we are going to discuss today about the programming, because from the layman perspective, I am explaining this to you because I already mentioned.
Mhm. Okay.
From there onwards, I'm going to start about the programming. So, programming, because normally when we see any of the application, because if you want to know about the programming language or something, first of all, we must be knowing about what are the different languages we have in application. Okay. Languages, right? So what are the different languages we have that we must be knowing? So normally languages will be of different types. So one is hypertext markup languages. Hypertext markup languages. The second one is called modeling languages. Third one is called programming language. Next one is called query language. Okay, these are the different languages we have in the field of application development. Why? Because if you see any of the application, normally application will be of three different layers. I'm not specifying this for any guideware or something, Andy. Okay, I'm explaining from the layers perspective of the application you see. Normally applications we see, as far as the application is concerned, we'll be having three layers. First layer, second layer, and the third layer. The first layer is called presentation layer, means whatever the screens you are going to develop, all these things are comes under presentation layer. An example, I can say in the previous session, if you remember in the last session, I have told you, um, I have shown you policy center, policy center, right? So Guidewire policy center yesterday. In the last session, I have told you yesterday. So whatever the policy document you see, means if you want to update any kind of policy records, or if you want to edit anything, or if you want to see any kind of activities, this is all something comes under front-end development. That's what generally we call it as front-end development. So whatever the front-end development we develop, irrespective of the tools are we using, everything are comes under the presentation layer. In a simple mode tense, this is also we call it as form. Form means there is a form presented. For example, policy document form is created where we are updating all the details like policy holder number, his age, date of birth, mailing address, phone number, contact details, what type of policy a person has taken, right? So all the details will be updated over here. This is what we call it as form or a presentation layer. That is point number one. Point number two, second is a business logic. Business logic layer we can call it as. Means if you want to write any programming or if you want to develop any kind of logic for a particular functionality. For example, being a user, you have given 1 plus 2. Whenever you are pressing the enter button, you have got a result called 3. How you got this? Because there is a programming which was written in a form of using different programming languages. There is a logic written by the developer for addition of two numbers. Either it can be 1 plus 2 or it can be 100 plus 200. Okay, or it can be 500 plus 300. So addition of two numbers, written a programming done by the developer where system has understood the instructions and it has given the results to you. That's where generally this second layer comes into picture. Now the third layer is called data layer. You know that. What is data layer? Whatever the database you are creating, the kind of data tables you are going to create. For example, you are updating the policy records of the customer. When you are updating the policy records, what will happen? Whatever the form you have created and whatever the fields that you have mentioned in the form, the same thing has to be stored exactly the same in the database. Means if you are updating the policy number, that has to be stored in the policy number column itself. If you are mentioning the date, it has to store in the name itself, phone number, mailing address. So everything has to be updated in the database. For that, what is required? Some database designing you have to do. If you want to do the database designing, first of all, you must be knowing about data models. Understood, sir? Clear or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you take any application, of course, I am taking an application example of Policy Center because ours is relating to Guidewire Policy Center application. If you take that as an example in the previous session, as I told you, So any application we develop, we have three layers. Irrespective of the technology, I'm talking about. Irrespective of the domain, we are talking about. Either it can be a Java we use, or if we're using a Python, or we are going for Gosu programming, or you are preparing HTML pages or something. These are the three layers will be there for any of the application. And these three layers are developed under the single platform. That's where generally architectures are comes into picture, because I don't want to get into more of this. You know about this. Architectures means single tier architecture, two tier architecture, three tier architecture, entire architectures we call it as. Let's say standalone applications. If you take Excel as an example, whatever the three layers I have discussed with you so far, all these three layers are developed under the single platform. That's what generally we call it as Excel. Standalone applications we call it as. Means you are giving input over there, you are calculating the calculation, everything over in the same Excel on the same platform, and data will also be stored on the same platform. Are you storing any kind of database? Are you creating? Are you adding any database for Excel? No, because Excel is a standalone application where input is being given there, output you can see over there. Whatever the data that are being accessed by you, everything will be done over here. So this is where we call it as three-layer architecture. These are the three different layers developed under the single platform. That's where generally Excel is an example for standalone applications. Now, second is two-tier architecture. Means you have a client system, you have a server system. So client systems, you may be having 10 client systems. Let's say you are managing the policy center application, your organization. There are 10 people who are using Guidewire application, 10 people at different roles. From where they are accessing the data, they are accessing the data from the local server, for example. So when you are developing application, what is required? You need to write a programming for server side as separate. You need to write a programming for client side as separate. That's where generally client server applications. In Java, normally we call it as servlets, JSPs, all these things are comes under client server applications are. Right, so this is where generally we call it as client server applications, two-tier architecture. Three-tier architecture, most of the web applications now and then we are using, all these things are comes under web applications. Means you are accessing the data from web, from the server, from the remote server. If you are, for example, we are working on Guidewire application. When we are working on Guidewire application, assume that Guidewire is a cloud application. From where you are accessing the data? You are accessing the data from the server. Yes or no? Right? You're accessing it
Yes.
from the server. Where the server is located, server is not located where you are working on. It is located in the cloud environment. Cloud people are maintaining, either it can be AWS or it can be Azure, it can be Google Cloud, it can be IBM, whoever are the cloud service providers. Using the cloud service provider, they have developed and deployed cloud application of Guidewire, where you are accessing the data from that remote access, you are doing it. That's where generally you see when it comes to the third three-tier architecture solved. So these are the different applications. Because why am I explaining this? Because we are all belongs to developer side. When you are talking about the developer as a Guidewire developer, when you are talking about, it's always important for us to understand what are the three different layers are there for any of the application. This is a common understanding and common example which I can say for anyone. Now, I think you understood now. Clear?
Yeah. I got it. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the languages, when you talk about the field of IT, when we are talking about, there are different languages. I will tell you why are these languages. You can ask me one thing, Raj, why are you explaining about these languages? In what way, being a Guidewire developer, I am related. Okay, this is a common question you may come across. I will tell you the answer for that. Hypertext markup language, which is nothing but an example, HTML, right? So DHTML, all that, right? So Dreamweaver we used to have. Now we are using some Angular JS and all everything, right? So all these things we are using. So being a developer, when we are working as a Guidewire developer, when we are working for any of the module, either it can be policy center or anything. Of course, application is already existed. We are not developing application anything from the scratch. But when there is any kind of application you have developed, or when you are seeing any kind of user interface designs and all, there must be some technology which are used to design that front pages and all, or the screens, whatever the screens you can see it on that. That's where generally this hypertext markup languages comes into picture. This is point number one. Second, why modeling languages is required? Because modeling language means, example, you can see UML. Okay, UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Why unified modeling language? Because you want to explain some functionality to the technical team, or technical team wants to explain the kind of code what they have written. In what way they define the code. They will be defining the code based on preparing some diagrams in UML. Whatever the tools are we using, either it can be Star UML, we have Microsoft Visio, we have Lucid Charts, we have Rational Rows, right? So we have Draw.io, different tools we have. So using the diagrams, what kind of diagrams we prepare? We create class and as well as object diagrams. Because object diagrams and class diagrams are the one which explains you about what are the different classes, objects, instances we are using while you are writing the program. Because when you're talking about the program, there are some data types, there are some objects, there are some interfaces, there are some instances, everything has to be updated. If you want to explain that how you are explaining using class diagram. I'll give you an example to you. Because we have a tool called Star UML. Okay, this is a tool which is majorly used for preparing UML diagrams. If you are a Guidewire developer, point to be noted. I'm not talking about the programming because I am not yet came to programming. Here there are models wherein you can go, right? So where you can create some class diagram. Here you can see class and object. Class, right? So class diagram means if you want to define any kind of class, for example, you are creating uh, employee details you are mentioning. Okay, what are all employee details will be there? Employee will be having some ID number. Employee will have some name. His phone number will be there. His designation. Everything has to be represented. Am I right, sir? Clear or not?
Yeah.
So if you want to explain a program or a logic in a diagrammatical way of representation, that's where generally these class diagrams are being used. There are a lot of diagrams. You can see there are a lot of diagrams we have. We have sequence diagram, we have component diagram, we have deployment diagram. There are a lot of diagrams we use in UML. All these things comes under modeling language. Modeling language means that. Do you understand this? Yes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Modeling language means you are modeling and you are showing some visual representation to the team. So this can be used, these modeling languages can be used by anyone. For example, if you take business analyst team, okay, business analyst teams are the people who are functional people. Who are functional people. What kind of diagrams they prepare? They prepare use case diagram, they prepare sequence diagram, collaboration diagram, activity diagram, requirements diagram, etc. These are the diagrams business analyst will use because these diagrams, whatever I was mentioned over here, these diagrams will represent you the functional element, activity, or else you can call it as flow charts, the DFDs, right? So of course, DFD charts are relating to some logic, right? If else conditions, it will be represented. So let us exclude that for a BA. So use case diagram, sequence, collaboration, activity, requirements. These diagrams are considered and it will be showing you the functional element of a particular functionality. So business analyst uses this. Now, if you are a programmer, listen carefully, listen important, sir.
Yeah.
You get more clarity over here because now if you are a programmer, what kind of diagrams you are preparing? You are preparing some class diagrams. That's the reason if you can see some job profiles in Guidewire, developer roles and all in some profiles. I don't say every profile. They will ask you, right? So you need to have knowledge over UML or you need to have an experience to create some class diagrams and object diagrams. They may ask you as part of it, right? So class and object diagram, they'll explain. What are the different classes and instances we are using? Everything comes under programmer side. Next, if you are a deployment team, for example, because nowadays DevOps teams comes under the picture. But if you are a deployment team, you are using deployment diagram. Next, you are a developer or a technical person. technical person, you can prepare some component diagrams also. What are the different hardware and software components you are using? Everything that comes under this component diagram. Do you understand this? Clear? Right?
Yeah.
So why are these diagrams? These are the diagrams which are comes under modeling language. Means this is a kind of language in the field of IT where you are modeling something. Modeling something depends on the kind of role that you are playing. If you are a business analyst, the kind of functional role you are playing, the kind of diagrams what we use are different. If you are a programmer, you are thinking more from the logical perspective. So the kind of diagrams what we prepare will be as separate. If you are a development deployment team, the kind of diagrams what you are going to prepare will be as separate. So these are the things which being into a person who is learning about the technology or getting into the developer role as a guideware or someone, this is what something you must be knowing about the modeling language. These modeling languages, when it is being used, when you are working on any of the project, let's say, for example, we are working on some policy center configuration site, or you are working on integration site. When you are going to create any kind of configuration site working on, not majorly on integration, but majorly of focusing on the configuration, you want to make some changes in the fields, whatever the required fields which is already there, you want to make some changes in the fields. To change the requirement or to change the fields and all, you might require to write some code for a particular project. That code consists of different classes and objects. If you, how you can visualize this? Because code, for example, if you can show me the code, if I am a functional person, I cannot understand that. I can understand because code different public static void, right? So variable, different terminologies you will be using, which if I am a business analyst or someone, I cannot understand. But if you want me to understand, being a stakeholder, if I want to understand, how should you do that? For that reason, you are preparing a modeling diagrams. That's where you call it as class object components. For example, components means hardware components and software components. Let's say, for example, you are going to a retail store. I'll give you an example to you. You are going to a retail store. You bought some products, right? You went to the billing counter. What a billing person do? Billing person will take the products. He will scan it, and unit price will be mentioned there. He'll mention the number of units that been taken by you. The system will automatically, POS machine will automatically calculate the money, and it will tell you how much money do you want to pay. Now, what are the hardware components for this application? To make it very simple for you to understand, this example I'm giving. What are the hardware components here? Barcode reader, scanner, right? These are the hardware components. What are software components then? POS machine itself is not sufficient. POS machine must be integrated with inventory management system. Because whenever you are scanning the product, whether the product is available or not, how come you know? Because that has to be connected with inventory management system, then only you will be knowing that. Otherwise, you don't know.
Yeah.
Do you understand, sir? Clear or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where generally you need to talk about software components. वो हम बोलते software component. The one which we are talking about is called hardware components. So software components can be as separate, which are externally connecting for the system. Because this I am not relating to our Guidewire application. Okay, do remember. I'm not. First, I'm talking about the component diagram. What are the hardware and software components? But it may not be relating directly to the Guidewire application because you don't see any kind of hardware components outside. Because this is an application where you are doing your over the cloud environment. You are, for example, you are a claim specialist. What you are doing, you are receiving the claim from a person who has taken an insurance policy, submit of an application. Based on the request submitted by the person for the claims and all, verification and validation will be done. And subsequently, we do the claim adjudication followed by this claim settlements will be done. So for that, either it can be a claim service representative you may are, or you may be an adjudicator, or you may be a subscriber, whoever are we, right? So we may be, it may be any manager role or something like. So what normally we do, we receive it, we try to analyze whether this claim is really genuine or not. If we have identified any kind of fault claims and all, that will be removed. Based on that, processing of claims will be taken place. So for that, you don't require any kind of hardware things. Understood, sir? Clear, right? You don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But software component is required. What is software component? Assume that you are working on claims application. What is a software component which must be integrated with this? Policy center must be connected. Why? Because you have to access the policy data to the claims application. So that is where we call it as integration. For that integration, whatever the APIs we are creating, that is different. Do you understand this? Clear?
Yeah.
This is where generally we talk about diagrams and all, right? So use case diagrams, all these things, right? So deployment diagram, all that. This is all comes under modeling language. The third language is called programming language. This is something which, of course, you know it, but let me explain. To develop a business logic for a functionality, or functionalities, it can be a multiple even functionalities, and to address and to instruct the system to follow the procedure. For this, what you are doing, you are writing a programming. You are writing a program because you and me are speaking in a language called English. How system understands? System understand the way it understood. What kind of language system understands? That's where generally we call it as programming language comes into picture. So what are the different programming languages we have? We have different programming languages, C, C++, all that you know, right from beginning. C, C++ are different programming languages where assembly level, if you want to write any kind of assembly language in our system level programming, C, C++ we write. Java is a renowned programming language where you know that. Next, we have one more language called Gosu. That's what we are going to discuss. Okay, Gosu programming.
Mhm.
Gosu programming is a language which majorly used in the Guidewire applications. Using in P&C insurance. Okay, whatever the Gosu programming we are using, this is majorly used in the Guidewire application. This is what generally it comes into picture. Okay, so Java is known, but if you want to, when you want to write under the Gosu programming, whatever the program we developed Gosu, this is all developed under the Java only because using Java virtual machine only it's developed. So syntaxes are the differences. Majorly, I'll tell you the difference,
Mhm.
how different from Java to Gosu. But syntax level differences you can see. But the remaining things, whatever the data types we are talking about, the remaining all the data types, etc., everything will be as separate, as same. Okay, you don't see any kind of difference over here. So next we have a programming language called Python. Okay. This Python is a programming language majorly used in data analysis projects.
Mhm.
Okay. Because this Python as well as Gosu have some similarities because those two doesn't require any kind of deployment, something as separate. Okay, both are same. Gosu and as well as Python were same. You don't see same means the editor looks like this as I told you. You don't try to deploy or something like path settings or nothing required to back of it. You can simply write the program. For example, if you want to write any functional class, you can go to class. You have to give the class name and write down the code. Once it is done, if you want to run it, you can simply run so that automatically code will be generated here. So it is more or less like Python. Python is also more or less like the same way as I can see in Gosu, but you don't find this in Java because Java editor and as well as execution of the programs will be as separate and is different, right? So this is something which you must be knowing. So this is all something we call it as programming language. Next are the called as, which is called as query languages. SQL is an example for that. To write queries for the project we are working on. We write SQL queries. Okay, SQL queries. There are different SQL queries we will write to extract some information. If you want to delete, update, insert the data, right? So if you want to do anything, query languages are being used. So these are the different languages which normally we use when we are working on the projects. So being a guide,
Mhm.
as far as the role of a Guidewire developer itself is concerned, our focus must be mainly on the programming language. This is point number one. Next, in addition to that, from the practical understanding, what is that I'm going to teach you is about class and object diagram. These are the two diagrams are required because some projects and some requirements for Gosu developer, Guideware developer, they are asking. They're asking you to have some knowledge over class and object diagram preparations and all. This is required. So along with that, anyway, we discussed a couple of times about integration, APIs and all that. Anyway, we discussed. I'm not getting into that. But from the languages perspective, major languages or programming languages are required for you while to learn Guideware for Gosu programming and all. At the same time, you require modeling language, especially to create some class and object diagrams for the code that was written by developer. If you want to visualize it, class and object diagrams are something useful here. Understood, sir? Clear?
Yeah. Right.
So this is overall understanding in context to the basics of the languages, what are required for any person who are new to Guideware developer role. Okay, if it is a BA role, no, not required. But if you are a Guideware developer role, it can be a policy center because of course our focus is on policy center. It can be a policy center or it can be of claims. It can be of billing. If we are into, because there are some people I could see who are not having experience from the development will come. Yours is a different.
Mhm.
But of course, this is a revision for you. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
as far as the career transformation is concerned, they come. So it's always advisable for anyone to know about the languages. What are the different? Because when you talk about language, normal word comes is Java, C, C++. This is what we call it as.
Mhm.
That is how generally we being framed. Okay. But when you're talking about the language in a word used in the field of IT, when we are developing any applications in IT projects, languages are many. Markup languages are different. Modeling languages are different. Programming languages are different. Query languages are different. Modeling language, markup languages majorly to prepare front pages and all. Modeling languages to visualize some functionalities. Programming language to develop some business logic for a particular functionality so that you are instructing system to act upon. Query languages is to extract some information from the database. Whatever the information, make sure you need to create some data tables first, being a database person. Once the database is created, if you want to extract any kind of information, query languages are something useful here. Understood? Clear? Right?
Yeah. Very.
This is what generally,
Very.
this is what generally the basic understanding